Welcome, everyone. I'm truly grateful for this beautiful sunny day here in Southern California. I know you guys are coming in from all around the world. I even have some people who have tuned in from the UK, and I'm grateful that you have all taken time out of your Saturday to join us for our presentation with Julie. I feel the gut and nutrition are the number one things to address in regards to any type of neurological disorder or anything going on with the brain, because the gut is directly connected to the brain via the nervous system. And Julie is by far the best person to be doing this presentation. So before that, I'm going to go ahead and do a short little introduction on autism health, and bear with me. Okay, so Autism Health is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We do exist to educate families, professionals, and any individual, who is interested in addressing those underlying conditions associated with any neurological disorder. A little bit about us is that we are dedicated to advancing scientific research and improving the health and quality of the life of individuals with autism spectrum disorder and related neurological conditions. Our mission is to fund groundbreaking research, advance education, foster multidisciplinary collaboration, and expand access to trusted resources that empower families, caregivers, and professionals to make informed decisions regarding comprehensive, individualized care by translating scientific discovery into practical application, engaging community leaders, and strengthening systems of care for individuals, families, and communities associated with autism. So I would not be able to do this all on my own. I have a wonderful board of directors. My husband and I founded this organization 2 years ago, and our board of directors, Melanie Dokis, our treasurer, Krista Bourne, Amy Schaffert, who is our new director, and our additional board members, Patricia Marone, Jackie Christensen, Colin Carley, Jesselyn Castellini, and Mike Jakubowski. I'm going to totally mess that up. When we also have a great advisory board, these doctors, scientists, specialists, they do advise us in regards to, what to do and how to address, the concerns of parents and practitioners related to autism. So we do have a call to action. We are a nonprofit organization. If you feel it in your heart to contribute, it does help fund programs like this and, keep us going. And, a small little donation of $25 a month goes a long way, and they do add up. So if you can, take the time, go to autismhealth.com, you can donate through the website, or you can scan the QR code, and we will bring it back up later on in the webinar. So we do have a wonderful event coming up, and this is our flagship event, Autism Health Summit. It is April 24th through the 26th right here in sunny San Diego. If you want to come enjoy the great weather, we do have some amazing speakers. This year's headline speakers are Aaron Seary, Del Bigtree, Dr. Toby Rogers, Dr. Dan Goodnow, Dr. Sabine Hazan, and so many more. So you can go to autismhealth.com, or you can go directly to ahsconference.com. And today, for 1 week only, if you're listening to this presentation and you are logged on, I am giving you the opportunity to get $100 off an in-person ticket to the conference. And you can use discount code AHS100. And for 1 week only, it is going to end March 7th. So 1 week from today, that code will go away. And I'm giving you the opportunity to get $100 off a ticket. It's a great deal. It is a fully catered event. So if you're wondering why it does cost a little bit, we do provide meals throughout the day, and cocktail reception and, all kinds of fun things to engage in. It is going to be at the Legacy Center Resort and Spa here in sunny San Diego, and we hope to see you all there. So I really want to thank you all for joining in. We wouldn't be able to do all this if it wasn't for our wonderful professionals like Julie Matthews, who contribute their time on a Saturday. She skipped her Bible study today. To be able to be here to educate you all on nutrition and, other different things in regards to the health and well-being of individuals on the spectrum and other neurological disorders. She is super amazing. I'm so grateful for her. So, she is our keynote speaker. She is a certified nutrition consultant, educator, author, and published researcher. She specializes in personalized nutrition strategies that support focus, mood, and behavior in children with autism and other neurological disorders. Through her research, clinical work, books, and programs, she equips families and practitioners with practical tools for improving health and well-being for both children and adults. She is going to follow up with all those who have registered for this webinar. And she has some great information to get out to you all. And she does do her own, webinars and nutritional programs. And I highly recommend that you read her books and follow her because she's remarkable in what she does. And she's been doing this for, gosh, well over 20 years, right, Julie?
Yes.
You've been in this game for a long time, and she's presented at some of the best conferences out there, from Dan conferences to Autism One, to our conference, and so many more. And she's just well versed in what it is that she does. So I am so happy to introduce Julie. So I'm going to hop out of here, and I am going to stop my share. I'm going to pass that on to Julie for Julie to go ahead and start her presentation. And again, if you guys have just logged on, I want to let you know that if you want to chat amongst each other, you can do that in the chat. And if you have any questions for Julie, please put them in the Q&A and we will address all those questions at the end. Thank you.
Great. Well, thanks, Tracy. And if you haven't been to the Autism Health Conference, I highly recommend it. I've been a number of times and it's always a great time. The people are great. You always walk away feeling good and get lots of great information. So hopefully you'll be there. Let me jump into my presentation. Okay. So today I want to talk about personalized nutrition for autism. I really want to go into the science and a step-by-step approach to supporting health, learning, and behavior. So that's what we're going to talk about today. I'm not a physician. I'm a certified nutrition consultant. So this is informational. I hope you get some good information from it. And Tracy already talked a little bit about me, so I won't really go into too much. I have a master's degree in medical nutrition, and as she mentioned, I've been doing this for 25 years. And as she said, I speak all over. I'm the founder of Nourishing Hope and the Bio-Individual Nutrition Institute. I'm a writer and a published researcher. So I have two published research papers, and we'll talk about them today because they're, I think, very relevant and I think very helpful to really understanding how to apply this in real life. And I also am the author of the new book, The Personalized Autism Nutrition Plan. And the approach that I will mention is based on that approach. So we're going to talk about the research, and we won't get too much heavy into too much research. I love research. My book has, I think, like over 300 references. We're not going to go into that today. Just know that I have been looking at the research for a very long time, and so when what I do is really based in the science and what the research says. And so we're going to also look at different diets and how they help different individuals. We'll look at what is often missing, which I think is two things really, is personalizing it and what order to do it in, because that can make a difference. Everybody is different though, so there isn't always a cookie cutter way to do all of this, but I think that uh, doing things in a particular order and then figuring out how to personalize it for the individual are really important. And then just how to implement it effectively, and to do things that are sound nutrition principles. So, as Tracy mentioned, I am going to email everybody after this with my 5 foundations of personalized autism nutrition, and these are the first 5 steps of my program and the book. So my book is based on my program, which is all about uh, using diet and nutrition to help improve individuals. It is with autism, but also ADHD, anxiety, and a variety of neurodevelopmental delays and conditions. So I will go ahead and email that out afterwards. So you'll get some of the science, you'll get the first practical steps, um, you know, where to begin on personalizing. So check your email after the webinar, and I'll send you that. Okay, everybody, personalized nutrition for autism. That's what we're doing today. And we already talked about this slide that I'm not a physician. We don't need to go through my bio. I think the only thing here is the Personalized Autism Nutrition Plan. If anybody's wondering about my latest book, and we're going to go plenty into the research papers. And I already talked about the agenda. Okay, here, the 5 foundations of personalized autism nutrition. So I think this is a good place for us to start. So it's really the practical starting guide for supporting health, learning, behavior. And like I said, I have my book, which actually is the Personalized Autism Nutrition Plan, like I said, and it has a 12-step program in there. And that's actually, I wrote the book from the Nourishing Hope for Healing Kids program, which I've been doing for many years now and refining it over time. And so it really takes people through a methodical step-by-step approach. And so the guide I'm going to send you is the first 5 steps of that approach. And today we're going to talk about a lot of different principles of personalized nutrition, different therapeutic diets, and all of that. But this guide will take you a little bit more through that in for the time that we have today. So if you want to, I will send it to you after, or you can take a shot of the QR code. Okay, here we go. So one of the things I think is really important about the research is it really helps us significant with just understanding what are the underlying factors in various neurodevelopmental and neurological conditions, particularly things like autism, but also, as I mentioned, it could be ADHD. Some people in our program have Tourette syndrome or tic disorder, or we even have Down syndrome, individuals with Down syndrome, and a variety of different things. But autism is what I've really spent a lot of my years looking at. But you'll see why they're related, because they have similar underlying factors. And so personalized nutrition addresses those underlying factors. So it's less important, in my opinion, the words of the diagnosis, what the diagnosis comes back with, then addressing what the underlying factors that are at play. And that actually is consistent with families I work with. Maybe one of the children has autism, another one might have anxiety. This is actually a family that I worked with. Maybe the dad will have a digestive disorder, and the mom might have autoimmune or something. But when they apply the principles, since in this case they had similar genetics, then they received benefits in different ways, but in whatever was affecting them, because it was addressing those underlying factors, because those underlying factors just manifested differently for different people, because even if we share some same genetics, we are all very unique in our experience and what we've been through and all of that. So diet and nutrients really address those underlying factors. So that's really where I'm looking to apply personalized nutrition. And also, everybody, people often have different comorbid conditions, so we can often improve those as well. So someone might have autism, but they might also have hyperactivity or anxiety. And as we address these underlying factors, we often see improvement in those too, which really can help improve their quality of life. So, we often say in autism, if you know one individual with autism, you know one individual with autism. And, everybody is so different. They have different root causes and underlying factors. They have different symptoms. They have different comorbid conditions. Some have more GI issues. Some have more immune system challenges. Some are more mitochondrial dysfunction, whatever that might be. They have different nutrient needs and different responses to diet. So they might have the same diagnosis, but they have different biology and also different environment. So that's what we call a heterogeneous condition, just a fancy scientific word for they're all different. Each individual is different. The people within this condition have very different manifestations of it and underlying factors associated with it. And because of that, there isn't just one diet that works. There isn't just one nutrient that works. It's not just one gene that's involved. So when you have something that's very different, we need to apply it to that individual specifically. And so that's why a personalized approach is needed. And we've seen this in the research for ASD and ADHD as well. So there are a variety of different papers out there on this. And personalized nutrition and precision medicine and all of these kind of personalized aspects to improving health, it's a rapidly expanding field at this point. So when we look at the different underlying factors involved, some of the ones I really like to focus are the immune system or inflammation, oxidative stress. That's a really big one. GI, gastrointestinal challenges, problems with the gut, the microbiome, the good bacteria in our gut, poor detoxification, mitochondrial dysfunction, various endocrine challenges, and then our underlying biochemistry of, let's say, methylation is a really big one, transsulfuration and sulfation are other ones, and these can guide the foods and nutrients that we need. Actually, all of these things can. And all of these we see often present in individuals as a whole with autism, but we also see them in ADHD. We see them in depression, anxiety, and a variety of other different conditions as well. So that's why I like to look at the underlying patterns that are going on. So the question isn't, in my opinion, does diet help? It's which of the patterns is driving your child's symptoms and which diet can help. So with when personalized nutrition is needed, we're commonly looking at seeing, what do we see? We see often improvements in digestion, reduced discomfort, more stable mood, fewer meltdowns, better attention, better cognition, improved sleep, which is a huge one. If you have a child that doesn't sleep, that means you're not sleeping, your children might not, other children might not be sleeping. And that is, it's hard to do anything when you're not sleeping. So that's a really big one. I find parents get great relief when that can improve. Reduced anxiety, more language, or it could be language in a variety of different ways, or sociability and things like that. So these are just some of them. And as you'll see when we look at some of the studies, you'll see that we looked at 24 different symptom improvements. But I'd say these are some of the areas that I see improvements the most. Okay, so that's what let's look at why why do we see these improvements? Well, it's often because we're addressing those root causes or those underlying factors. So we see improvements in different symptoms because we reduce the inflammatory burden. Foods can be healing and anti-inflammatory. like antioxidants and things, or they can be inflammatory. And the thing is, while generally certain foods are anti-inflammatory, for some people, even those same foods might be inflammatory. That's why it's important to look at a personalized approach. At the same time, I don't want to overwhelm people that might be new to all of this. There are generally things that are helpful to most people, and then we refine it after that. That's why that sequence of doing things, I think, is important. So in my 12-step process, for example, removing the inflammatory things, removing the artificial colors and flavors, preservatives, MSG, that's step number one. Step number two is adding the good nutrition, the good, healthy, whole foods. Those are the first two steps, and generally, those are going to be really helpful and be good for most everyone. And then we might refine it later where certain foods might be better than others, and some might be adding to some symptoms. So that's why the personalization is important. So we also improve nutrient levels. We can help support balancing the microbiome through the foods we eat. We can improve gut-brain signaling and reduce overactivity of the immune system. Let's jump into two of the studies that I was part of. So this is my mentor, Dr. James Adams, and he has done, I'm going to guess, 100 studies at this point, 100 published studies, and I'm very grateful to be able to learn from him and participate. So two of the studies that I helped co-author were a comprehensive nutritional and dietary intervention for autism spectrum disorder, and this was a randomized controlled 12-month trial. And so we'll talk some about that. And then the second one was the ratings of the effectiveness of 13 therapeutic diets for autism spectrum disorder. So, what happens when we apply something comprehensively? So this first paper was a comprehensive dietary and nutritional approach, and it was 12 months. And it was randomized. So this is kind of when you think of like sort of the gold standard of research. They say, is it, a controlled trial? Was it randomized? All of those kinds of things are important aspects. And 12 months is a pretty long time for a study. A lot of studies will do 6 weeks or things like that. We also did a multi-layered nutritional approach, and we did more than one thing. And, this is how in real life families of children with autism apply nutrition. We don't just, add vitamin C and wait a year and see what happens. That might be how researchers like to study things generally, but when you're looking to help your child, you're going to want to try many of the things that people here help. And so that's what this study was. Look at some of the top things that the research shows to be helpful, that families often say are helpful, and doing a multi intervention type of approach, but at the same time layering them one at a time and stacking them so we can see a little bit of what is helping, what changes, rather than doing them all simultaneously. And then we measured the outcomes. And so the way that we did that was a multivitamin mineral formula on the first intervention. And basically it was more or less kind of one intervention a month for about 6 months, and then following them for the course of a year. It's slightly different than that, but that's the easiest way to describe it. And the second was an essential fatty acid supplement. Then we added Epsom salt baths, carnitine supplementation, a digestive enzyme, and a healthy gluten-free, casein-free, and soy-free diet. And we found an almost 7-point improvement in nonverbal IQ, which we were very excited about, as well as 4.5 times the developmental age improvement. So if you think about a typically developing child will develop 12 months and 12 months. A developmentally delayed child will develop less, which makes sense. So they were developing, I think it was, 4 months in that 12-month period, but the treatment, the intervention group improved 18 months in that 12-month period. So a huge improvement. There were improvements in mood and language and cognitive function and hyperactivity and sociability and attention and focus and sleep and all sorts of things. There were improvement in GI symptoms, and we found improvement in the individuals range from 3 years to 58, and even the 58-year-old had improvements. There were improvements, 30% reduction in GI symptom severity. So that was, really just a great improvement in their quality of life. And the gut and the brain are connected. So the gut isn't separate from behavior and the brain and all of the other aspects that we just talked about. So when there's improvements in the gut, that often helps in a lot of other areas. All right. Let's look at different therapeutic diets and also why different diets help different symptoms. So the second study looked at 13 different therapeutic diets. We looked at a healthy diet, and that was a diet that was rich in fruits and vegetables and protein and low in sugar and artificial additives and junk food. And then we looked at a low sugar diet. We looked at a Feingold diet. A Feingold diet is a diet that's low in food additives as well as a food compound called salicylates. And found great results with that. A GFCF diet, or a gluten-free, casein-free diet, that's going to be a diet that's free of wheat and other gluten grains and casein found in dairy. So a dairy-free diet. We looked at gluten by itself, gluten-free by itself, casein-free by itself. We looked at corn-free, soy-free, food avoidance diets based on IgG and IgG food testing, as well as based on observation. And we looked at the specific carbohydrate diet. I think there was a question in the Q&A on the carbohydrate diet, the paleo diet, and the ketogenic diet. And this is what we found. So the blue is the overall benefit and the orange are the adverse effects. So you can see really good overall benefit from each of the diets. All the diets had a very positive overall benefit. It was a scale of 0 to 4. And then the orange is the adverse effects, the overall adverse effects, because we broke out the individual improvements symptom by symptom. Like I said, there were 24 of them that we'll go into. And then we looked at adverse effects, and we looked at about 24 of those. So the overall adverse effects were also very low. And actually, this survey was part of a broader survey that looked at supplements, nutritional supplements, that in the study were called nutraceuticals, as well as psychiatric and seizure medications. And diet performed significantly better than both supplements and psychiatric and seizure medications, and also significantly better at having less adverse effects than the psychiatric and seizure medications. So diet really performed amazingly well. And I think sometimes, I think sometimes we think that the diet's not as maybe exciting, fancy, powerful as supplements and all these other things, but diet actually improved symptoms incredibly well. And the great thing is, this is something that everybody has access to in their own kitchen. So here were the symptoms. And this is a chart looking at across all of the diets, so as an average of all the diets. There was a symptom improvement called general improvement. I didn't put that on here. I wanted to put the more specific things on. So attention, cognition, irritability, well, those were 3 of the top ones. Health, hyperactivity, aggression, agitation, anxiety, constipation, diarrhea, language. Those were some of the top, I think, 10 or so. And you can see, this is when we look at something like attention, we see more than 20% of individuals improved in attention across all the diets. Then if we break down the diets individually, we can see that some diets, I think the Feingold diet, I think it was 43% of individuals improved in attention with the Feingold diet. Don't quote me on that. It could have been hyperactivity, but they were both very high. And, I think it was 38, 43%. Some really significant amount of individuals improved in some of these symptoms with some of these diets. Um, we could spend hours on this study. There were about 700 different data points that we analyzed from this study. So I'm just giving you a small kind of snapshot today. But one thing we did find was that different diets helped different symptoms. So if you think about that, maybe some of us know if we know the ketogenic diet, for example, like the ketogenic diet has been used in seizures for decades. And the number one diet for improving seizures in the study was the ketogenic diet. I don't think that's surprising to people, just given that that's been known for a long time. But that's a good example of not all of the diets improved seizures. In fact, if we took an average of all of them, do I even have it on here? I might not have it on here. Not all of the diets made that in particular improvement, but those individuals that did that diet, that had that symptom, had a much more significant improvement in that symptom overall. And these were percentage of individuals that improved. Let's see, what else can we say? A healthy diet was one of the top diets. A Feingold diet was also. Neither of these diets, along with the food avoidance diet, these three diets did not have any adverse effects reported. So, it makes sense. A healthy diet, there's probably not a lot of downside. Nobody reported anything negative from doing a healthy diet. Nobody reported anything negative from a diet that removed foods based on testing of IgG and IgG and IgE, which is kind of immune system or inflammatory type, other types of responses. And then the other one was the Feingold diet. And this is a diet that I really like, or what I actually refer to in my book and program as a low salicylate diet, because there are a number of different ways to do a low salicylate diet. One of them is the Feingold diet, which has been around since the 70s. So just give you a little bit of, feedback here, a little bit more on this. There are some diets. Let's just take the ketogenic diet. It's not a diet I typically start with. So if we look at that process of the various steps and starting with step one, the ketogenic diet in my book, literally and figuratively, I guess, is one of the diets I would do more. I would try for an individual that might need it, maybe more towards the end of the things I would try, only because it's more restrictive, right? And if again, it depends on the individual, right? If someone had seizures, I might have a different answer, right? But if I'm just looking at the average person, wouldn't be typically the first one I would try. I would usually try other things first. And if you go straight to something like the ketogenic diet, you don't know, was it because gluten was removed? Was it because grains were removed? Was it because other starches were removed? Was it because they were in ketosis with the ketogenic diet? So that's a little bit of kind of that methodical thinking and sequencing of the process that I think really helps diet be more doable for people, and also get good results. And the ketogenic diet, just to give you an example, okay, it's here in the middle for overall benefit. If you subtract the overall adverse effects, which we did in the study, the net benefit made it a little bit on the lower side of the beneficial diets. Again, still beneficial, but you'd look at it and say from that one metric, it was on the lower side of the diets. But if you look at individual symptom improvements, it was the top rated diet in, I think, 9 different symptom improvements. So again, it depends on the individual, what symptoms they have, what's going on for them, what else they've tried, and a variety of different things. Okay, so when we look at different symptoms, why different diets help improve different symptoms, that's because therapeutic diets help. I think the way I think of therapeutic diets, they typically remove certain foods that cause inflammation. They calm immune activation. They support neurotransmitters and our brain chemistry. They might look at improving digestion or absorption. Um, they might be helping to remove gut derived toxins. Some support mitochondrial function or energy production. Maybe they're helping to improve nutrient deficiencies or reduce excitotoxicity in the brain, or maybe stabilizing blood sugar and things like that. So the different diets have what I call different mechanisms of action. What I try to do is match up those mechanisms of action, the things that make those diets effective, with the symptoms for that individual. So if somebody had a lot of inflammation, I'd be looking at, okay, well, which are the diets that help most with inflammation? And then what particular one might be applying, or ones might be applying to that particular individual. So there are different mechanisms, and that leads to different symptom improvements. And that is what we saw in the paper. Different diets were more helpful for certain symptoms, and we concluded that symptoms can help us to guide the different dietary approaches that we might look at for somebody. It's not the only thing. In my experience, what I help people with is there are a number of different ways to help determine which diet might be the best for someone, how to personalize the dietary approach. But symptoms are a good one. So when we look at different things and we kind of look at some of the research from that paper, we look at, a healthy diet. The number one symptom improvement was health. So a healthy diet improved health. Imagine that. But it was significant, and it was really, I think, helpful to see, because sometimes we think, oh, there's so much going on. What difference is going to make? It does make a difference. There were less illnesses in that group that was doing a healthy diet. Um, Improvements in constipation and cognition. A lower sugar diet had improvements in hyperactivity, irritability, aggression, attention. The Feingold diet had improvements in hyperactivity, sleep, sensory sensitivity, gluten-free and casein-free. And this is just like a tiny little snapshot, right? I'm only giving a few of them. Gluten-free, casein-free diet had improvements in language, attention, diarrhea, social interactions. But again, I see a lot of, I'll just keep going. Food avoidance diets, both IgG and observation, there were improvements in eczema and reflux and GI symptoms. Corn-free was one of the top diets for diarrhea and constipation. Again, I do see that in other diets as well, depending again on the person, but I found that interesting about corn. Specific carbohydrate diet, it's a grain-free diet. For those that aren't familiar, it reduces grains and starches. It actually eliminates the grains, and only allows specific carbohydrates. And there are a lot of improvements in digestive symptoms. It tends to support improvements in microbiome balance. That wasn't necessarily reported in this study because we didn't look at that specifically in the study. And then a ketogenic diet, seizures, as well as, like I said, language, attention, hyperactivity, and a variety of other things. Okay, so if we look at two of the top diets, a low sugar diet and a diet that avoided food additives, dyes, and things, there's lots of good research showing that sugar is particularly, high sugar intake, but sugar in general, since children today eat about 3 times the recommended daily allowance, some many much more than that. It can contribute to blood sugar imbalances, inflammation, neurotransmitter imbalance, hyperactivity, anxiety, immune system. It can suppress the immune system for a number of hours after. And then if we look at artificial additives, artificial dyes, they're linked to hyperactivity, and we've known that again for decades. Anxiety, restlessness, inattention, neurotransmitters, and histamine release. So sometimes simple removals can make meaningful shifts, and that's why I kind of promised you I'd tell you a little bit about, okay, how do you personalize this? What are some of those steps? What does that process look like? That's why step 1 and step 2 are to remove the artificial additives and make the diet healthier. All right, let's talk about one of the special diets. This is the gluten-free and casein-free diet. Um, this diet, let's start with why I feel that so many children are negatively impacted by gluten and casein, and why so many families say they see improvements with a gluten-free and casein-free diet. I believe it's because of the research that's out there. We see, and because it affects so many different underlying factors. So if it's affecting a bunch of underlying factors, there is a good chance that somebody is going to have at least one of these underlying factors going on. That's why I think so many people improve. So we find high gluten and casein opioid compounds in the urine. So this literally means that, like opiates, like heroin and morphine and those types of things, gluten and dairy, when they're not fully broken down, can convert into these opiate compounds. And so you see a lot of cravings for these foods. Maybe one might even say, I've seen in clients, addiction to these foods. There's IgG reactions, these immune system inflammatory reactions found in gluten and casein, and an 81% improvement after 3 months on a GFCF diet. Inflammatory markers to gluten and casein, zonulin, which causes leaky gut from gluten and gluten is one of the top things that causes the release of zonulin in the body. But other things like dairy can do that too. IgE reactions, autoimmune responses to these foods, cerebral folate deficiency, and I'm sure other mechanisms that we will continue to learn about as we go. So the GFCF diet created or improved a lot of symptoms in individuals with ASD. And the other thing I want to say is, while we're talking a lot about autism, there are these comorbid conditions, and many of them have ADHD as well, and their ADHD often improves. And people with ADHD also often have similar underlying factors. So while we are talking today, and I guess I should have said this at the beginning of the presentation, while a lot of what I'm talking today is research on autism, my experience is that these dietary changes can help support a variety of different conditions. So I guess I did mention that to some extent, but I really want to make that point as well. So the GFCF diet was the most popular diet in the study, and that I think makes sense because we see that in real life as well. Probably one of the most common diets that you hear about online, and that's because it's really beneficial and it helps a lot of people. We also found in the study that GFCF diet was quite a bit better than the gluten-free diet alone or the casein-free diet alone, and I think that's because both gluten and casein create a lot of these challenges. So we see high opiates from both gluten and casein. We see high GG with both gluten and casein. We see high inflammatory markers with both gluten and casein. So that's why I think that they work better, that we saw better improvements when people removed both of them, because they can create similar reactions. And so that's why I strongly recommend, if people are going to try it, that they try at some point the removal of both of them 100% for some period of time to see if they want to see the true potential of the diet, then I think the best way to give it a chance is to remove both of them. And again, remembering to do it 100% because a lot of people tell me, well, we're doing GFCF, but, get a little infraction here or there. And a small infraction, even only once a week or a couple times a month, can continue to perpetuate those underlying conditions of inflammation and things. So, if you're going to go through all the hard work, it makes sense to give it the best possibility to see results. And the study showed that this diet, the GFCF diet, was a top diet for attention, cognition, language, diarrhea, hyperactivity, social interaction, sensory sensitivity, stimming, and things like that. Okay, another thing that we found in the study and that I see in real life, I was actually really happy to see this in the study because I have been talking about this with families for many years, which is that to me, a therapeutic diet needs to not only remove the problematic foods, which is pretty much what most therapeutic diets are defined by, right? Gluten-free diet removes gluten, that kind of thing, but also what they include and including healthy foods. So it removes problematic foods and adds and includes healthy food. So when the basics aren't enough, or when you're still looking for further improvement, it could be either. It could be that you got some improvement, but you're looking for more. Some people don't actually see much improvement till they remove, let's say, all the things. Maybe not all, but let's say the things that are causing the majority of the issues. So if someone had problems with gluten and dairy, but they also had problems with, let's say, salicylate, they might not really see much change in, let's say, hyperactivity and behavior, as an example, until they remove both of them. So that's why I really strongly encourage people not to give up when they just try gluten and casein. If they don't see results, sometimes people tell me, oh, well, we tried diet, it doesn't work for our child. Because they tried the gluten-free and dairy-free diet and it didn't create any significant improvement for their child. But I then also heard people tell me, but then I removed whatever it is, let's say salicylates for an example, and all of a sudden I saw amazing improvements in hyperactivity, their aggression, their irritability, whatever it might have been. Those improved greatly after I removed that second thing. So remember that it's good to start with the basics, but remember to consider what other things that you might want to do. Advanced diets, for example, whether it's, like I said, low salicylate or low histamine or low glutamate, maybe low oxalate, low FODMAP, GAPS diet, things like that. So low histamine, that we often see that with mast cell activation, maybe people that have mold exposure or something else that might be stimulating the mast cells, maybe some sort of infection or something. Low histamine, histamine can often create anxiety. So looking at things like that. And again, it's different for everybody, so these are just common examples. Low glutamate, so glutamate is excitotoxic. Low oxalate diet can often be associated with pain. It can add stress to the mitochondria. Low FODMAPs diet create a lot of bloating and abdominal pain and other digestive symptoms. The GAPS diet also as well, or the foods removed from the GAPS diet can often improve. The foods often removed on the diet can create these symptoms, and the GAPS diet itself sometimes can help improve gut symptoms, as well as then the brain. It's called the gut and psychology syndrome diet. So it's the gut and the brain is how it's helping. Okay, let's see. So choosing the right diet and applying it strategically. So we want to know where to start and then what to layer, maybe when to stop the diet. So in my book, at the end of each step, I talk about, you know, when to go to the next step, because whether it's stopping it or knowing it's, right to go to the next step, that kind of thing. And then what to look for, what to monitor, those types of things. So even the right diet, when it's applied at, let's say, I don't really like the word wrong, but let's just say even when the right diet's applied at the wrong time, it might not yield the results, because it's can be like peeling the layers of an onion. So I don't want to make it sound complex, but there is a lot of thinking that goes into it. Even just my 12 steps in the order, it took me a long time to kind of think about how to do that in terms of what tended to help people the most. But small changes can make a really big difference. So I really want to, nourishing hope is all about nourishing hope. So I want to encourage you, if some of this seems basic or some of this seems overwhelming, just know that there's always a place for you to start, whether you've been doing this for a long time or you're just getting started. So I want to make sure that we're nourishing hope and having you realize that even small changes can make a big difference. So starting with those foundational nutrition principles is a good way to go. Adding some basic nutrient supplementation, some basic good food, removing the problematic things like that. They can go a long way before maybe removing other foods, maybe the more diets that involve some food restrictions from some food removals. Supporting digestion is important. Introducing changes gradually, I think I like to do that generally. And then, tracking what's helping and then what's not, and what someone was eating at those times. So, foundation first. I don't want to say restriction later, in that I don't like to think of therapeutic diets as restriction. I mean, technically they are doing that. So if it does seem a little overwhelming, they have to restrict something. Let's be real, you do have to restrict some things. But I don't like to think about it that way, because really I like to think about it as, once you get going with the diet, it's not really any more difficult than the diet you were doing before. I mean, at least that's what parents tell me. Sure, there's a steep learning curve, but once you figure out what they like for breakfast, what they can do for lunch, what are the ingredients you need to avoid, um, it really is just, I think of it more as a therapeutic diet rather than a restrictive diet. It's really looking at personalization and not guesswork, right? So that's, I think, really positive. Um, you know, it does take effort to do a new diet. So if we can have less guesswork and be more targeted through personalization, we're more likely to see positive results and more likely to continue with it, and the child is as well. So we like to look. So personalization really involves understanding the underlying conditions, understanding the different mechanisms of the diets, looking maybe at some functional testing and understanding what's going on from that perspective. Some people like to look at genetics, uh, tracking the symptoms, figuring out a methodical sequence of doing things, and keeping record of those. So symptoms, as we talked about, can be one of the useful ways of guiding a personalized approach. They can give us clues. I talked about these earlier. Maybe if somebody has hyperactivity in behaviors, I like to consider salicylates. Maybe they've got a lot of congestion and things like that. Histamine might be a consideration. Maybe if there's bloating, particularly after eating fruit, they might consider FODMAPs. So these can help give us clues as to what we might want to look at further.
Julie, are you still in your presentation? Because we don't see it still.
Did you see it this whole time?
No, we saw it for part of the time and now it's gone again.
Huh. It says I'm sharing the screen. Let me stop sharing and let me go back. It's weird. Let me know, everybody in the comments. Are you seeing my screen? Okay.
Oh, I guess they
Patricia,
are, and I'm just not. Okay.
Patricia and Gabriella can see it.
Okay.
But yes, I think people can see it. Thank you, Dale. Thank you,
Okay,
Tiffany. Thank you,
sorry.
everyone. Okay, that's all right. Phew. I just want to make sure that we didn't have the
Okay,
same
go
problem.
back. It's
Anna,
just
thank
me
you
that
as
can't see
well.
it.
Okay, thank you, everybody. All right. Let me move this to the side. Let me go back. Okay, where was I? How do I go back? Can I go back? I'm going. Okay. So why do I sometimes see both families and practitioners get a little stuck? Is it doing too many things at once? Like that first study we talked about, doing kind of implementing one thing at a time. Even if you layer them on top of each other over time, it does help to see if there's a reaction or improvement. It's more going to be likely to that one thing that we did rather than doing too much at a time. Um, sometimes people get stuck, skipping nutritional support or not tracking symptoms or giving up too early, like I mentioned in the example of the diet, or conflicting advice, whether it's from people on the internet or diets. Diets have conflicting advice. And it can be confusing when some people are telling you you really need to try this diet, and other people are saying, no, you really, we really benefited from this diet, and the diet principles could be conflicting with each other. And the reason for that, by the way, that someone got a benefit from this diet and someone got a benefit from that diet is because some people benefit from one diet and more than another. And I just realized this from, years and years of having clients come in, and somebody would improve with this diet, someone would not improve with that diet. And so that's why I started to put together, well, who was improving with this diet and why did they improve? What do we think was underlying that? What were the symptoms going on for them? And this diet, what was going on with those people? Okay. So, I mentioned this a little bit. What's the cost of guesswork? Well, we can get diet fatigue, and that can be true for the child. Like, oh, another diet, we just did diet, it didn't help. Or parents can feel the same. I've been cooking for this new diet and it's not helping. Um, uh, Nutrient depletion. We should just, if we restrict too much for too long, we want to be careful. We don't want to have less nutrients coming in. So we really want to not overly restrict diet. Um, uh, you know, there can be, if we don't hit the right diet, maybe there can be challenges with symptoms or stress or things like that. So it's not about trying harder, it's really trying more strategically. And when we apply nutrition systematically, we have this clear starting point. Okay, we're starting here. We did this. What happens next? Then we're going to layer those items. Now, everybody is going to be different in the items that they layer. In my book, I talk about, and in just the overall program, I talk about how the first half is a lot more kind of general principles and tend to be um, beneficial, generally speaking, for most people. Whereas the second half is a lot more specific, and you don't do every step in the second half of the program. Otherwise, you'd be doing every single diet, and you can't do every single diet. It doesn't work that way. So it's really about layering those elements that are going to be the best for that person. That's why learning about those is so beneficial. Um, so monitoring it, um, making adjustments, evolving the diet over time. Maybe at some point, reducing salicylates is really beneficial, but salicylates can be really nutrient dense, wonderful foods. So we don't want to reduce them if we don't have to, or we don't want to restrict them to that level if we don't have to. So one of the things I like to do is, well, how do we improve the underlying factors so they can go back to a more balanced diet? So those are a lot of the things that I like to help families understand. Um, and then progress, just having that continued progress. All these things can really help people. Okay, just a little bit as we wrap up. You know, if I can be helpful, if you want to take it further, and you're a parent, I would imagine most people on the call are going to be parents. Nourishing Hope has all that information. I've got my Nourishing Hope program, which the book is based on, and we really walk you through that. Live Q&As for, support, that type of thing. And if you're a practitioner, I train practitioners in this at bioindividualnutrition.com. So either of those can be helpful for you. I think that for most parents, really getting that step-by-step guidance. So the program has, handouts and step-by-step information and guides and videos and a like-minded community, and you can go at your own pace while at the same time having live calls with me. So anyway, that's the program. If that's helpful to you, we'd love to see you. We have April is Autism Awareness Month, as Tracy and I were just talking about before this. And so we usually have a very nice, large group of families that start in April. So if you're interested in that, enrollment hasn't officially opened, but if you email us, we will get you what you need to know before we open it. And that's info@nourishinghope.com. And if you're a professional, email us as well. We're happy to. We do big enrollments for April, because it's the time that we really, really push this information to as many families as we can. We really want to get the word out there. And so that's why we do a lot in April. So email us now if you want to. And then remember, I've got the 5 foundations of personalized autism nutrition, and I'll send that off to you. And then this is, again, just more about me. I already gave you these, so I don't need to really belabor these. info@nourishinghope.com, and the 2 websites, nourishinghope.com and bioindividualnutrition.com. So anyway, everyone, I hope that you found that helpful. I will go ahead and stop sharing my screen now. Well, Tracy, thanks for having me.
Such a pleasure. It has been wonderful to have you and your expertise. I'm really excited. So this will go out on Monday, and I want to reiterate for anybody who did not hear me earlier that if you go to autismhealth.com or ahsconference.com and you register in the next week to attend the conference in person, not virtually, you can receive $100 off with promo code AHS100. So this will end March 7th. We're hoping that Julie can join us there.